And yeah, this is one of the talks that is about a bit of, about presenting us and our work and how we do it and why we do it. And we called it project design because when we came together with the Link project, one of the pieces that came from our side, from my side and Luna Red, was the idea of design and project design. And for how from there we get to projects. And what I'm going to share a bit is not so much a theory of project designs, but some learnings around how this Link project came to be and how to design for it. So it's going to be around it, but it's not the basic theory, even if I'm going to get some input to it. So why I'll start screen sharing, where the first question is a very basic question, which is, what is design? We're talking here about project design. What do we mean with design in that? Project is usually quite clear, but design? Do you have any ideas? I would really like to hear something about that in the chat from you. Um, what do you think is design? So let's see what we have here. An intentional way to craft an experience journey. The structure, yeah, it has to do with that. It has to do with intention. It has to do with the journey and a lot of other things. You can see my screen, can't you? The what is design? We have something to build. Something is also in there. When we talk about design and adventure, is also in there. All this is in there. But what is the focus? What is the center point when we talk about design? When I use it, it's you will see why this is such a simple um, presentation in a minute. It is design is usually about optimization. Optimization for a need or function you have. So if you do graphic design, you optimize for readability and to get your message across. If people look at your flyers and say, "Oh, I'm confused," you have a design mistake. If you design a kitchen, you optimize for cooking. If it's a hassle, if it's complicated to get at the fridge, or the table is at a height that creates aches in your back aches or stuff like this, then you have a problem in your design. That is a design mistake. It is something that makes this structure what you design create problems, create friction. And usually when you design, you use methodological processes. You not just sit down and say, hey, no, it's usually like when we use permaculture, it's we start with observation, then we analyze, and then we design a proposal. So there are certain steps you follow systematically. You just don't do, there's the intentional way, yes, to craft something, to craft the journey or to craft whatever you want to craft. And you can design anything. The next question when you talk about design is, what do you design when designing a project or when designing? When we start designing, there's this big piece when we start doing it consciously that is, I need to design everything because everything I start doing something and then something else pops up to design and to design more and design more. And then you just end up with everything totally structured and you spend your whole day designing and you don't do a thing. So you really have to find the most important pieces to design. So just a couple of ideas here. And when designing a project, what are those most important pieces? It's in, as far as I see, it is the foundational stones, like the big vision you're working with when you, especially when you work for yourself or with a group, on how you work, on where you want to go, what is your long term. And then like it's sometimes called the bottleneck points. Where are the difficulties? How do we handle those difficulties? How do we get in there? And this is sometimes it's about a plan, a working plan. Sometimes it's about an evaluation method, or sometimes it's about how to pass on information, or how are the roles, or how are of the people in the team, or how is the workflow. All this you can design methodologically and what of it you do within a project always depends on on what is really needed in that project. Where are the difficulties? What works well, and where are the friction points that say there is a mistake in the design? And there's some points I always recommend putting on, which is the long term. Where do I want to go? What is my horizon? In what direction do I want to walk? Because these long-term things and these foundational topics are the ones that are the criteria on which to say if it's the right decision or not. If I make a proposal, a working plan proposal, and say, I'm going to do this, yeah, it works, but does it bring the results I want to be able, or is it in the way I want to be able? You need clarity in this. So this is, I usually call it vision, purpose, values, and then you use all three of those in different ways. There are a lot of tools to work around with this. And then there's a tool, I will just talk about this for a moment, that is an idea when we talk about systemic thinking, where not so much about designing everything, but to give space for emergence, which means that for things to happen spontaneously. Now, just look at the session or what we have done today. We have created a space for you to talk, and what emerges, what happens spontaneously, is maybe a collaboration. We already had in the networking process a couple of collaborations that happened spontaneously out of the members of our group. We didn't do anything for that. We didn't put in our working plan and our goals. We want 5 collaborations of our members, and then we created some process to bring them together to start creating a collaboration. They just did it. And why did they do it? Because they, as people, the matters, the participants of the process, had the will to start doing collaborations. They found themselves within a structure that invited it through a process and through structures that they could be in communication with each other, that they could be in processes that brought them together. And then they started doing it in a spontaneous emergence. And there are a lot of other things that have happened during this year. We still have not mapped this out, so the example will be a different one. So talking about project design, my route has, what have I designed with my personal project, and then I will show you how we got to link from there on. I have my vision, values, purpose design. I do have a design on personal organization and tracking of tasks, which is really, I love it. It helps me so much. And tracking of dialogues. I do have a design on my underway on how I want to work, and there is a really explicit way of how to do networking and how to move with the networks. And I have designed a legal container, which is an association. These are some of my foundational designs I have that create a structure for things to happen. Also, I refused in a lot of things, and I find this more and more clearly, to not work with a lot of tools people usually give me when creating starting as an entrepreneur or having an association. For example, I tell you, if you want to sell, you need a funnel. You need clear goals. How many people you want to reach? What do you want to... You need goals, yes, but there are some other pieces that don't work like this. And this is a bit, if we go here, now we get to this, and then I will show you what is. Yeah, you need clear goals. The Link project does have some clear goals, and those clear goals were all these things. We started with a proposal that Lumia and me wrote. Then we did the kickoff meeting, which was an in-person meeting. It was a goal to organize this one. We did the retreat in Finland. We did the retreat in Spain, out of which came out tutorings, and we did have goals of, we want to do so many sessions, we want to have so many participants, we want to do this. And then we had the creating connections, which was the networking that happened a lot. And we had the convergence, and we did have some goals and numbers and how many sessions we want to do. But what do we want to come out of the sessions? That is something for the participants and for the dialogue to decide. And some things happened spontaneously again, like the Finnish people from the retreat came to the creating connections, the networking sessions. But the Spanish people went a lot more into the tutoring. We did And they did not go so much to the creating connections. Why? Language. A lot of them don't speak English, and they do have a stronger local network. They don't need to look so much on the international level, the European level that we had in the creating connections, as the Spanish. Now, this is what we did during this, and this convergence is the end point of that process we have designed. Lumia and me have designed. There's still another step, which is the closing and the thing. But the interesting piece is, how did I get there? And that is a really funny story, and that shows just why goals don't really work. Like a couple of years ago, I did a course, a teacher training. And during this course, I started teaching a course, which was called the Design Web. And with the Design Web, with this course, I did this course in Spanish and the training was in English. There was this woman who was Sky, and she knew I was organizing this course with other members of this course I haven't written down, and she brought me to Ruben. Ruben started doing in this course, and then we started opening up a podcast, which is Regenerando. And after having the podcast for a while, Ruben told me somebody does want to do Erasmus Plus program, so he did put me in contact with Lumia. I have been with Lumia for a while, and there were the Perma talks. I did know her from that, which is something Dominic, which is also on the Link team, organizers. So they knew me a bit. This, I think, has to do with why they said yes to trying this out with me, but I'm not sure. So I started working with Lumia to do the link proposal, and now we're doing this convergence. So yeah, I could have planned to do this, but without having gone to this course 2 years ago, it would never have happened. Yeah, and if without having taken all those steps, it would not have happened. I wouldn't have met Lumia if I hadn't done the podcast with Ruben, which we just decided 2 years ago. I think it's, yes, 2 years ago now, sitting somewhere in northern Spain, taking a coffee together, talking about regenerative thinking and saying, oh yeah, we yes, oh yeah, we need material on regenerative thinking in Spanish because there's a lot of material in English and known in Spanish. And if we want to plan, how do I plan for this outcome? I create structures for things to happen, and I know that things will happen. And if I have the right structure within me, I know where I want to go. I handle my tasks. I know when to write people. I'm in dialogue with this. If I'm doing networking and I forget that I need to write somebody in 3 months, it won't happen. I need to remember that. I need a structure that reminds me of that. If I get 20,000 proposals, it won't happen. And I say yes to all, I won't be able to handle the work, so it won't work. So there needs to be some certain structure for those spontaneous, strange processes to work. As we say, it also happened in Link. We know about it, but we have not really mapped that. But I do have created a little map on the convergence. This is going to be the next step here, because all the people, it's not even about all the people talking about the convergence. It's about things that has happened during the last years in my life and in the Link project to bring people to speak at the convergence. I mapped a couple of talks. Here we have the vegan permaculture talk, the permaculture values talk, impact. Here are a couple of different talks we're going to have during the convergence. Now, the funny piece on this is we have 2 talks of people who participated in the retreat and then they did the talk. And it was their idea. They proposed it. We have other people who, if we look at, I went like 2.5 years ago, there I got to know Marco and Daniela and other people. I went to an event called Gathering of Tribes. Now we have 3 people speaking at the convergence who I got to know at the Gathering of Tribes, or not, because Nadia was in the Creating Connections networking, but she doesn't have time to talk. So her friend Sandra is going to talk. And everything around here happens like this. We have the tourism panel. The tourism panel happens because we have in the podcast Regenerando uh, um, through another group where we're in. We met Sonia, we did an interview with her, and then Sonia has given us the input on the tourism panel. So then we brought together Gisela and people I know from a network where I also brought in Oscar and Kim, who are going to talk tomorrow. So it's all just about bringing things together and being at these spaces where you don't really know what being in a space will bring you. And I went to the Gathering of Tribes two and a half, I don't know, a year and a half ago. And first I thought nothing came back. Doing this project, suddenly it all popped up again and again, with things that had happened with people I got to know at this event, like one at a year. The first half year, it didn't bring me anything. And then suddenly it does. And then another thing brings and comes. And when you design for project, that is something I learned, or for me, the big learning when looking at the link convergence is that it's not linear, that those typical planning tools we get when designing a project often limit what we can plan for, because we can't even imagine at the starting point where we're going to be in a year or two. And if we say, okay, I'm going to be selling those courses and I create a funnel for those courses, then I create a very limited container. And the interesting piece is to create those open containers where things can happen and you can grow with them and adapt them all the time. So when we go back, and this is why at this point I brought in my own, because it's the ones I could bring in clearer than the link ones for this example. I do have a long-term container. I do have a container for organizing, and I do have a container for bringing myself into the right position, and a container that allows me to do all this stuff legally. And then I create smaller things that bring me step by step forward. So I will stop sharing here. It's a bit of a, I don't know if I was clear, if there are any questions or doubt around that topic. I would really just like to hear something about it. Yeah, Marco said in the chat, he agrees a lot. And the funnel can still be supportive. Yes, if used to access people readiness and level of interest, yes, it can be supportive. But if I do believe if my main strategy is a funnel, I'm limited, yes? Okay, so Susanna says she has to leave to get the dogs going. Anything else you want to say to it? Yes? Yes? So yeah, Jim Marco. Yeah, keep your funnel. I tried making one, didn't like it, can't work it. And so I'm working those crazy networky things instead of it. And I do it within a really clear framework. That is also something I want to put emphasis on. It's not just doing, yeah, it is all very clearly pointed at. A funnel can work at certain points, but it's not the solution for everything, in my opinion. Okay? I hope that was useful and it helped you find a bit of ideas. And then we could just stop the recording and give back to Lumia.